Welcome to the podcast. My name is David Shanhun, and these are the chats I wish I could have had with someone as I've created life as a full-time musician. If you're on that road and you need a friend, or you need to hear the same stories and struggles that you're going through from another human's mouth, you're in the right place. Connect with me at davidshanhun.com and let's move you into that space where you're really thriving and sharing your gifts with the world. Let's go. All right, it is week 2. We're doing another podcast, and I will admit, I've already thought about quitting. I've already thought about being like, you know what, let's do a different schedule, every week. Maybe that's too much. Like I said in the first one, there's a lot going on. I did a show this afternoon. I'm recording this. It's Sunday night. It's nearly 11 p.m. I need to unload the car, repack it for a wedding that I'm doing early on Waiheke Island tomorrow, and I will be up super early. And this is gonna go out Monday 8 a.m. every frickin' week. And it's fascinating to me what comes through for this podcast, because even just sitting down to set up a camera, turn on a light so it hopefully looks somewhat decent for those of you that are watching as well as listening, it's like, man, there's a lot of emotion that comes through me. And yes, I'm tired. Yes, I've had a busy weekend of shows. It's late. I'm going to be up early. That is part and parcel of sometimes doing this. And I realize it's entirely my own choice to do this podcast. It's my own choice to keep my word, to have this come out on time. I could do it a day late, but there's something, I just trust that there's something that's going to come through that's going to be of benefit to you and me having these chats and having them on a time frame that's maybe not comfortable. And in the setup, in the intro, it's like, these are the chats I wish I had, and I wish as much earlier on, I wish I connected with other musos that were doing this kind of thing, that had hectic schedules. I got some glimpses of it. I was fortunate to have some lessons and get to hang out with Paul Jones, and it's like he would drive up for the ferry between islands. Touring in New Zealand, there's the Inter-Islander ferry, and they have a superb thing where you play on board, provided it works, but you play on board, provided the dates and times work, I should say. They're great at organising it, but you play on board, they organise you travelling across between islands. It's a wonderful little gig. It's a great benefit to us as musos. It takes out a huge cost of getting around and traveling and touring, but it provides music and is a really cool gift to people traveling across. If they want to hang out, they can have a free show while they travel between islands. But he would just sleep in the car, and it's like, I got these little glimpses of some of what, when you see an artist like that that's performed around the world, he's toured, he's done his own music and shows for years and years and years. It's like, I've had these glimpses where he's like, you need to be playing 8 hours a day if you want to be professional. And I'm like, oh, that hits for me right now. Even saying it, I'm like, oh yeah, I'd forgotten. I'd wanted to forget that, like maybe if I just do like a little bit, it'll somehow work out. Maybe if I do a whole lot less work than the next guy did, who has the results I want, maybe it'll still work out. It's like, it probably won't. Anyway, I feel like there's so much I want to say, and I'm gonna condense it and keep it in these teensy-weensy little episodes. I mean, like, honestly, these are probably going to be anywhere from 8 to 15 minutes at a guess. It's like, I want to share one thing at a time, and this episode is really like, it's not for everyone. doing music full time is not for everyone. And I realized that just in saying doing music full time, there is the craziest expanse of different things that we all do in that sense. But I want to speak to one thing particularly, and that is a little bit like last week. There's a lot of things and a lot of people around you that are well-meaning, that are caring, that are loving, that are wonderful people that won't understand your dream, your drive, your goal, that perhaps doing a podcast at 11 p.m. on a Sunday night, still needing to change your strings for a wedding tomorrow and get up early and repack the car and do all that stuff, as well as actually edit this and put it online. I get energized by that. There's something that, as much as I've received some beautiful comments from the first episode, and I'm truly grateful, and I'm grateful for your comments, but I'm also freaking grateful that there's a few comments where I'm like, man, this is somehow hitting the spot for a few people, and if it's hitting the spot for a few people, that's all that it needs to do. It's like, man, if you get some value or something out of tuning into this, whether you're on a train on your way to work, whether you're at the gym, whether you just listen because you're chilling at home in the afternoon or at the beach, that's like, my mission is complete. You know, so thank you. That is the gift and reward for me. But equally, it's like doing this, I will be a better, happier, healthier human for me doing this, staying up late and pushing myself. I use inverted commas. What are these things? Rabbit. I'm doing, if you're just listening, I'm doing fake little, it's like the thing, I don't know what to call them. Anyway, quotes, air quotes. There we go. But it's like, quotes, pushing myself to do this is like, I'm a happier, healthier human, and I hope that is twofold, that in listening to this, you are a happier, healthier human, being like, oh my gosh, there's another crazy guy over in New Zealand that, even though it doesn't make any sense, he's recording this podcast, he's doing this, he's adding extra things into his evening, when really what would logically or like conventional wisdom would make sense is like, bro, you're performing at someone's wedding tomorrow, make sure you get a good sleep and you're well rested and you look, don't stay up doing all these things. I'm like, no, I need to do both. And that's just me. And so I guess the title of this episode as well is, it's like, don't take my frickin' word for what is good as well, and suddenly like don't send me messages being like, oh my gosh, I stayed up till 3 a.m. doing all sorts of things and like working on projects and things like that, and then I got up at 6 and I'm like, I'm wrecked. It's like, you will know throughout all these podcasts, like, I hope that something I say has value, or you connect with, or you get something out of it, but you'll know out of whatever comes out of listening to this chat, there'll be something that comes up for you that it's like, oh, you know what, I actually need to freaking go to bed at 10 o'clock every night. That's what's going to work for me, and I've been ignoring that. The next person, it will be different. They're like, oh my gosh, you know what, I could do 1 or 2 hours less sleep and start recording my album, start working on something I want to do. Because when you dive into it, you might need to set some guidelines, right? I do get carried away, and I'm like, okay, it's probably good that I have an alarm maybe set for like, let's say 2. If I had an alarm set for 2 a.m. to be like, bro, go to sleep now, that might actually be a good thing sometimes. But your path is your path. And just to speak to briefly kind of wrapping up this little episode today, it's like you're going to get people that come and say to you, that's not healthy. There's probably going to be people that comment on this and say, that's wildly unhealthy. Like having 3 hours sleep is just not a good thing. Great. Thank you for what shows up in your life when you get 3 hours sleep. 3 hours sleep works for me a lot of times. Yes, I'm tired. Will I bitch about it? Sometimes, absolutely. But there's something for me that, again, this is my path. I'm sharing this, I'm doing this. None of this is going to be edited. And that's the way the podcast is going to go. Yes, I ramble. Yes, I've gone on like how many tangents in this episode? A lot. So I feel like there's quite a lot of energy coming through me for this podcast. So if you're listening and you're like, oh my gosh, this guy was all over the place today. Yes, that is a little bit how today's podcast is going. And I appreciate if you're listening that you've stuck through with me and you're hanging out on it. But the thing that came through to share, and I haven't got to it yet, but is some of you know I studied classical guitar. I did not complete that degree. And I went into it not really wanting a degree, but my family and background, I guess, is like in my head, and this may not be specifically what they said, but in my head it was like there wasn't an option. You got a degree of something. I didn't really realize that I could just actually say, no, I don't want to do that. Interesting path again. But I realized after I had a lot of people around me that had degrees that were, using them for the most part. But looking back, I think it was uncomfortable that I was only 2 papers away. I'd gotten so close. I'd still spent 3 years studying towards this degree. And it was 2 papers in anything. They were my electives. But people started saying to me, you need to complete your degree. 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 And then they would list why I needed to complete my degree. And yet I realized somewhere, I got a little bit beaten up by it. Let's be honest. It was like, man, and I actually enrolled 3 separate times to do 2 Japanese papers. I studied Japanese in high school. And again, doing 2 Japanese papers, I thought it would be pretty easy given I had a history of studying Japanese. And I could just tick the box of like, cool, I completed my degree. Anyway, I kept doing a bit and then just not finishing them, and paid for them each time. So good waste of money there. But getting back to these chats and people telling me I needed to complete my degree, I had this epiphany one day where I realized no one had asked me what I wanted to do. I was getting told, it felt like daily, it probably wasn't, but a lot, you need to complete your degree. And none of these people had said, and they would tell me why. Like then, my favorite one was, okay, this might be a little bit of an extended podcast this week, but my favorite one was, I was turning up to a school to teach guitar at that high school as an itinerant guitar teacher. And the music teacher said to me, like, we had this chat, right? When are you going to finish your degree? You really need to finish your degree. Because then you could teach in the high schools. And it still makes me laugh and kind of be a bit sad all at once. Because I didn't say anything on the day, which is not always true. But that particular day, I kind of went away being like, you know why I'm here, right? Like, I'm here to teach guitar in the high schools. That's not a restriction that if I had a degree, I probably would have been paid more. I wouldn't have had to, get an LAT here, which is a limited authority to teach, which means you're like licensed. Licensed, I don't know if that's the right word, but you've been vetted essentially. Anyway, the point was, it's like I finally asked, after having that epiphany, this came up again, and this is where things changed for me, is the same person said to me, like, what? You need to complete your degree that will allow you to do this and do this and do this and do this, etc. And I looked at her and said, wouldn't you want to know what my goals are first? And it's like, oh, I've repeated this story, and honestly, every time I repeat this story, I am reminded of how many times I do this, where it's like, man, I'm kind of sad at myself, and I'll be honest, a little bit pissed off, because it was such a big deal and impact in my life, and I realized that I do it is people say, share something, different bits and pieces, and before I ever frickin' ask, like, dude, what do you want to do? Where do you actually want to be? I'm like, oh, you should do this, or you should email this person, or you should go there. I'm like, oh damn. I was maybe I'm just helping them get the same epiphany. I don't know. That would be a light way to think of it, I guess. But whatever your path is, if you have a picture, even if it's a faint, not clearly detailed picture at this point, you're like, for me initially it was like, I know I want to be performing full time, and that was enough guidance to kind of know I don't need to waste any more time trying to get a degree. That's not a barrier to me doing what I want to do. So as we wrap up this longer episode with a lot of waffling and a lot of stories and tangents, I hope that you take away just maybe dancing a little bit more to your own step, to be totally cliched, but navigating the choices that are right for you. Everyone around you may disagree, and you might have to deal with a certain amount of heat from people that are close to you. But you'll know what's true for you. You'll know if you need to detour a little bit one way or the other. You'll get a nudge. And with that, let's wrap up this week's episode. I appreciate all your comments. I truly, it just came through before this episode that I was like, I'm gonna be making these every frickin' week. And for whatever reason, it feels like something I need to do, to share and contribute myself in whatever way this contributes. I have no idea really where it leads. I appreciate the chats, and I appreciate your time tuning in. And it means different things are going to come through each week, as like tonight, it's a busy weekend of shows, same as on tour. So much love from me. We'll see you next Monday at 8 a.m. and happy choosing what's true for you as we sign out. See you later.